Hey guys. Okay, so I'm trying a new platform to record these videos. And when I record, what I see on my computer is completely backwards. So I apologize because when I do record, I always check to make sure that what I'm writing is in frame and you can see it. So if it's not, I'm going to have to remember that it's backwards from what I'm used to doing. So I wanted to try this platform to see if it worked better and that it would actually save the whole entire thing so that I don't have to record and re-record about 4 different times because sometimes they shut off in the middle of what I'm saying. So today we are starting the quadratic unit. And we're going to start the quadratic unit with a skill that you need in order to understand how to factor a quadratic, which is coming up in a couple of lessons. So I'm kind of front loading before we actually get into what is a quadratic function, what's its purpose, how do we solve them. So you need to understand how to multiply binomials before we get into solving a quadratic. So today's lesson is pretty short because it's not super complex. And I always like to introduce quadratics with this because it's not as scary as some of the things that we're going to get to a little bit later. But yeah, so hang in there with me. I'm going to turn on my document camera and then everything's going to look backwards for me, but it should come up the right way for you guys. Okay. So if you could please update your table of contents to multiplying binomials, and that will be on page 70. And then turn to your page 70. And title it multiplying binomials. Turn my light on. So this platform doesn't have a pause feature on it, so I can't pause the video. When I'm writing something, usually that's what I do. So it might take a little bit longer this time. All right, so before we can actually get into multiplying binomials, we need to talk about what a binomial is. And I'm not sure if you've heard of the term monomial, but we'll talk about what a monomial is. So a monomial, right, if you hear mono, right, has a lot of different roots, but this means this has one term. So it is just an expression that only has one term. So that term can look like 3x squared. Okay, so this is a monomial. There's only one term in it. Okay. So a binomial is an expression with 2 terms. And usually those 2 terms are being added or subtracted to each other. Okay, so it's the sum or the difference of 2 terms. So for example, we can have our 3x squared minus 5x. Okay, these are 2 different terms, right? They're not the same term because this one's x squared, this one's not. And so this would represent a binomial. It's the difference of 2 terms. Okay, so that's a binomial. Another term that is used frequently is a trinomial. So again, that is the sum or difference of 3 terms. So an expression that has 3 terms, and the terms are either being added or subtracted by each other. So, for example, you could have your 3x squared minus 5x plus 4. So that is an example of a trinomial. And then all of these fit under the big general term, which is a polynomial. So that is an expression with many terms. Okay. So these are different forms of polynomials, and they have their own names: a binomial, a trinomial. But anything that has multiple terms, it's a polynomial. Okay. So I just needed to get that out of the way before we talk about multiplying binomials. So when you multiply binomials, so when multiplying binomials, you want to think FOIL, FOIL. So you want to think FOIL. So if any of your parents have gone through algebra or algebra 2, ask them what they remember about it and if they remember foiling. Because that was a huge thing, even when I was in school, that was drilled into us was FOIL. So we're going to think FOIL when we multiply binomials. So I'm going to go through what FOIL stands for while I do an example on the side. So let's take the term, or let's take the binomials 3x plus 4, and we're going to multiply that by the binomial 2x minus 5. Okay, so the biggest mistake that students make is they do 3x times 2x and 4 times negative 5. So if you can remember FOIL, it'll help you to not make that mistake, okay? So the F in FOIL stands for first. So what that means is you multiply the first terms by each other, okay? So 3x times 2x, so we did 3x times 2x, and we get 6x squared. So multiply your first terms. The O in FOIL stands for outer. So now we take the 2 outer terms and we multiply those by each other. So I'm going to do 3x times negative 5. So 3x times negative 5 is negative 15x. Okay, so since it's negative 15x, we want to write minus 15x. So that's the outer term. Okay, so now we have the I, and the I stands for the inner term. So I inner. So now I want to take the 4 and I multiply that by 2x. So I have 4 times 2x is positive 8x. So plus 8x. And then the L stands for last. So now I do 4 times negative 5. And 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Okay? So when you're multiplying binomials, think FOIL. First, outer, inner, last. And you're multiplying those terms by each other. Okay? Once you've done that, then you want to combine like terms. So now I can combine my negative 15x plus 8x. So my final simplified version is 6x squared. Since it's negative 15, it's minus 7x and then minus 20. And I can't simplify beyond that, right? Okay, so 6x squared minus 7x minus 20 is the trinomial that we got from multiplying the two binomials. Okay, so when you see something like this, see how there's no sign in between, it's not plus or minus, so that means multiply these. You think FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. Simplify by combining like terms, and that is your final answer. A lot of the times you will get a trinomial. Sometimes you will not get a trinomial, okay? And we'll go through an example like that. So let's do an example together, and we'll see if this makes sense. So the first example we're going to do is 3n plus 2. And we're going to multiply that by n minus 6. Okay? So you see two binomials. They're being multiplied. So you think FOIL, right? So you think first, so 3n times n, right? And we get 3n squared. Okay? Then we have our outer. So now multiply your outer terms. So I have 3n times negative 6. You do not have to write this every time you do it. I'm doing that so that you know what I'm doing and why. Okay, so when you do this, you don't have to write out all of this. You can show me with your arrows, and you would want to do that so that you're showing your work, but you don't have to write it down like I am. Okay, so 3n minus 6 is negative 18n. So that's your outer term. Then we multiply our inner terms. So now we have 2 times n, which is positive 2n. And then we have last, which is 2 times negative 6, which is negative 12. So now we simplify that by combining like terms. So negative 18n plus 2n. So we have 3n squared minus 16n minus 12. And that is your trinomial. That's as simplified as you can get. Okay? So let's do one more example together. Just because I want to show you what this looks like, because you might see it sometimes. And then if it makes sense, I'm going to do more examples, but if it makes sense, just try some of the practice, see if you get it right. And then if you do, you can do your edge elastic. If not, come back, watch some more videos and see where you might be getting confused. So let's do another example. Sometimes you'll see this. X minus 2 quantity squared. So that means I'm taking x minus 2 and I'm multiplying it by itself twice. So that would be x minus 2 times x minus 2. So when you have something like this, x minus 2 squared, this is called a perfect square. Okay, so that's what this is called, because you have two of them. So it's called the perfect square. Okay, so we do the same thing that we do for the others. All right, so we multiply the first term. So you would have x times x, which is x squared, right? So your first term, x times x. Then we have our outer terms. So x times negative 2. And that gives us a negative 2x. Then we get our inner term, negative 2 times x is again negative 2x. Oops, sorry. Negative 2 times x. And then we have our last. And that would be negative 2 times negative 2. And that gives us a positive 4. Okay? So now you combine like terms. Negative 2x minus 2x. Please do not say 0, right? So you would get x squared minus 4x plus 4. Okay? So that is how you multiply binomials. The next example that I'm going to do is an example where you might not end up, or you're not going to end up with a trinomial. Okay, so some of you might ask me, when would we not get a trinomial? When would we not have, when would we not have 3 terms in our answer? And this is when. So if we had x minus 2 times x plus 2. Okay, so you have x minus 2 times x plus 2. So if we follow our FOIL rules, and I multiply my first terms, right, x times x, I get x squared. Then I have my outer, which is x times 2, which is positive 2x. Then I have my inner, which is negative 2 times x, which is negative 2x. And then I have my last, which is negative 2 times 2, which is negative 4. Okay, so then when you combine your like terms, the 2x minus 2x, you see how the positive 2x and the negative 2x, those are going to cancel out. So you have no x terms. So you would have x squared plus minus 4. So that's an instance. These are opposites, right? So your x plus 2, x minus 2. So x squared minus 4 is the multiplied version or the simplified version of multiplying these two binomials. So that is the only instance when you're multiplying a binomial when you will get 2 terms in your answer. It's when you have the opposite last term there because they cancel out. Okay? All right, so I am going to do a couple of more examples. As I said, if this makes sense to you, you don't have to do them. You don't have to take notes. Okay, I'm just going to do them for those of you that want to see more done out. Okay, so as always, if it makes sense, you're like, oh, I get it now. Just, okay, move on to the practice. All right, so I'm going to do three more examples. All right, so I don't even know what example number we're on anymore. I think I've just been writing example. Let's multiply the binomial 3x plus 1 and 4x minus 5. Okay, so we're going to think FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. So my first term, 3x times 4x, is going to give me 12x squared. My outer term, 3x minus 5, I'm sorry, 3x times negative 5 is negative 15x. Now I can multiply my inner terms. 1 times 4x is positive 4x. And then I multiply my last. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. Combine your like terms, negative 15x plus 4x. So we have 12x squared. Negative 15x minus 4x is negative 15x plus 4x is negative 11x, and then minus 5. And that is your final answer. Okay? All right, let's do 2x minus 3. So 2x minus 3 times 3x plus 3. Okay. So you take your first term, so 2x times 3x, and that is 6x squared. So there's your first. Then the outer, you have 2x times 3, so plus 6x. Inner, we have negative 3 times 3x, so minus 9x. And then last is -3 times 3, which is -9. So if you watched the other example, and I said that if you had the last two terms were exact opposites, you would have a binomial as your answer. If you notice, though, your first terms in each binomial are different. So in order for them to truly cancel out, you need the same exact first term as well. So that's what I meant by that. So if you have the x minus 2 and then x plus 2, that is what's going to cancel it out. If you had 3x minus 2 and then 3x plus 2, that would cancel it out. Okay, but in this one, you have two different first terms, right? We have a 2x and a 3x, and that's why these terms didn't cancel. Okay, so your final answer is 6x squared minus 3x minus 9. Okay. All right, so what I would like you to do is practice a couple of the problems on your own, and then let me shut this off. So I would like you to practice on your own in the practice section in Google Classroom and check your answers. If you have any questions, let me know. But I'm not going to tell you a specific number of problems that you need to practice. If you do one or two and you get them right, great. Then you can move on to the edge elastic. If you're getting them wrong and you want to try again, or check in with me, either way. So it's totally up to you. It's there for your practice. So it's kind of like how we do it in class. You're just not in front of me, so I can't read how you're doing. So if everyone gets it, right, we usually move on. So this is an opportunity for you to work at your own pace. So if it's making sense to you, great, move on. If it's not, ask me for some help. Okay? I'll see you guys soon. Bye.